problem? What's the problem? What's the problem?
Someone killed my parents.
Pardon me?
Welcome back to Dark Truths. Today, we're diving into a case that, well, it shook America. The Menendez Brothers.
Beverly Hills, 1989.
Two young men, Lyle and Erik Menendez, brutally murder their parents, Jose and Kitty.
This case still has us talking, even decades later. The new Netflix series, Monsters, the Lyle and Erik Menendez story, it proves that.
It's a story of, well, wealth, privilege, terrible secrets, and alleged abuse.
A family portrait, you could say, twisted into something horrifying.
And we're going to break it all down. Not just the murders themselves, but the twisted family history that may have led to that night.
We'll also be hearing from a man named Michael Francis, who actually served time with Lyle and Erik in LA County Jail.
His story is, well, chilling, to say the least.
We do need to say that this case is going to involve disturbing details and some sensitive topics. Our goal, though, was to try to understand what happened.
Exactly. So let's start with the night of August 20th, 1989. The scene. The family's Beverly Hills mansion.
Jose and Kitty Menendez were found in their den, shot multiple times with shotguns.
At close range.
Yes, at close range. The level of violence was extreme. Kitty, it seems, was shot again while she was already wounded, on the floor.
It's hard to imagine the terror they must have felt in those final moments.
It's
almost personal. You know, it feels like more than a robbery or something.
That's what's so disturbing about this level of violence. It often suggests something much deeper, a rage beyond simply wanting money.
And yet, initially, the brothers, they weren't even considered suspects.
Right.
They told police that the mafia had killed their parents, playing on Jose's reputation as a tough music executive.
It's incredible that that alibi actually worked, at least for a little while. These were young men, seemingly naive, not criminal masterminds. Their actions in the months after the murders, however, started to raise doubts.
They went on a lavish spending spree, luxury cars, designer clothes, expensive trips.
Right.
Almost like they were trying to erase the horror with things, with possessions.
It's psychologically very complex, their behavior. Was it a way to run from their guilt, or maybe a desperate attempt to grasp at some kind of normalcy they no longer deserved? Or was it simply a callous disregard for the lives they'd taken?
This is where Michael Francis comes in. This former cellmate who spent 11 months with the brothers on death row in LA County Jail offers a really unique perspective.
Francis was skeptical at first of the brothers' claims of abuse. He knew that world, where manipulation was a way to survive. He could spot a con. But what he witnessed during his time with Lyle and Erik, it challenged even his cynicism.
Francis was not easily fooled.
No, he wasn't.
Which makes his observations even more compelling.
The heart of the brothers' defense was years of alleged abuse. They claimed their father, Jose, subjected them to horrific sexual and emotional abuse, while their mother, Kitty, just looked the other way.
These are very serious accusations.
Yes.
And it's important to take them seriously. But proving abuse after the fact, especially in a case like this, is incredibly difficult.
Absolutely. And Kitty's role in all of this becomes even more complicated when you consider what Michael Francis observed. He noticed that Kitty seemed to, well, resent her sons. Maybe that explains why she didn't do anything about the alleged abuse.
It's hard to wrap your head around a mother hating her children, but could this resentment, if it's true, could it be a piece of the puzzle, a factor in the toxic family environment?
It's a chilling thought, isn't it? This family portrait with a darkness hidden beneath the surface. And then there's this. Francis recounts an incident where Kitty apparently threatened Lyle and Erik with a knife.
A mother threatening her own children. It's almost too much to grasp. Was it a real threat, a moment of madness, or a sign of some deeper psychological disturbance?
It brings up so many questions about the dynamics within the Menendez family. Were they really that picture-perfect Beverly Hills family, or was there a dark undercurrent of dysfunction and abuse all along? We'll dig deeper into these questions later. So the brothers' defense, they painted this picture of a childhood filled with fear and trauma. They alleged that the abuse, especially the sexual abuse by Jose, their father, it started when they were very young.
It's hard to even imagine the psychological damage that kind of abuse would have on a child.
Imagine, growing up in a house where the person who should be protecting you, that person is the source of your terror. That's the reality the brothers' lawyers were trying to get the jury to see. A childhood where trust is shattered and your own home feels like a prison.
Their defense argued that this constant fear and abuse, it warped their perception of reality, led them to believe that they were in imminent danger.
They claimed they felt trapped, like their parents were going to kill them to silence them for good.
This claim of self-defense, it was a crucial part of their legal strategy.
But the prosecution argued that it was all a lie, a desperate attempt to justify a cold-blooded murder driven by greed, plain and simple.
And the brothers' actions before and after the murders, they did seem to contradict that self-defense argument. They bought shotguns weeks before the killings.
Seems like premeditation, right? And as we talked about, their extravagant spending afterward, it doesn't exactly scream remorse.
Right, and let's not forget their initial alibi blaming the mafia. That doesn't really fit with a self-defense story either.
So how did the defense explain those incriminating actions?
They argued that these seemingly contradictory behaviors, they were actually consistent with the effects of prolonged abuse. They said the brothers were living in a constant state of fear, unable to think straight or make rational decisions.
Their therapist, Dr. Jerome Oziel, he became a key figure in their defense.
Dr. Oziel testified that Lyle and Erik truly believed that their parents were going to kill them. His testimony was meant to back up their claims of imminent danger.
But Dr. Oziel's involvement in the case, it was controversial, wasn't it? Oh, absolutely. The prosecution quickly pointed out Dr. Oziel's own, well, let's say questionable ethics. He'd violated doctor-patient confidentiality. He'd secretly recorded therapy sessions with the brothers.
And those recordings, full of, the brothers' darkest thoughts and confessions, ultimately led to their arrest.
Those tapes, they became a double-edged sword. They offered a glimpse into the brothers' psyche, but they raised serious doubts about Dr. Oziel's credibility and the validity of his testimony.
So the jury was left to sort through these conflicting stories.
Yeah.
A story of abuse and self-preservation versus a tale of greed and calculated murder.
It was a high-stakes legal battle. The brothers' lives were hanging in the balance. The first trial focused on the abuse defense. It ended with a hung jury.
Some jurors believed the brothers' account of abuse and fear.
Right.
Others weren't convinced.
But the second trial, with a different jury, had a different outcome. The second jury found Lyle and Erik Menendez guilty of first-degree murder. They rejected the self-defense claims. They were sentenced to life in prison, no possibility of parole.
Their conviction, it started a national debate. Could a history of abuse, even if it's proven, ever justify taking a life? Where do we draw the line between victim and perpetrator?
The case forced society to confront some uncomfortable truths about domestic violence. It peeled back the facade of those seemingly perfect families, revealed the potential for hidden horrors beneath the surface. It made us question, how well do we really know the people closest to us?
In the Menendez Brothers case, it went beyond the courtroom. It became a media sensation. Every twist and turn plastered across newspapers and television screens.
And some argue that media frenzy, with its focus on the brothers' wealth and their privileged lifestyle, it might have influenced the outcome of the trial, maybe even prejudiced potential jurors against them.
Even today, decades later, the debate rages on. Were the Menendez brothers victims of a manipulative justice system? Or did they get what they deserved for their heinous crimes?
It's a case that defies easy answers. It challenges our perceptions of family, justice, and the very nature of truth. And it leaves us wrestling with questions about the impact of trauma, the complexities of human behavior, and the flawed nature of our legal system.
So the defense's argument really focused on the devastating psychological effects of the abuse Lyle and Erik supposedly endured. They said that those years of sexual and emotional abuse, especially by Jose, their father, it created this pressure cooker of an environment.
They claimed that Lyle and Erik's, their sense of what's normal was completely shattered. Their boundaries were violated, their trust betrayed by the one person who should have protected them. It's a complete reversal of how it should be, the parent-child bond.
The defense argued that the brothers lived in this constant state of fear, hypervigilance, emotional turmoil.
Yeah, classic symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. PTSD. You see it a lot in survivors of abuse.
Right.
And the defense, they brought in psychological experts to assess the brothers. And their testimonies painted a picture of two young men really deeply scarred by what they had gone through.
So basically, the defense was saying that the abuse left them unable to think clearly, to make rational decisions.
Exactly. They were trying to show that the brothers' actions, as horrific as they were, stem from this deep psychological damage, not from any cold-blooded malice.
But the prosecution, they weren't buying it. They argued that abuse, no matter how terrible, doesn't give anyone the right to kill.
Right. They maintain that Lyle and Erik are smart, capable young men. They made a choice, a conscious choice to kill their parents, a choice driven by greed, not fear.
And in the end, the jury, in that second trial, they agreed with the prosecution. They found Lyle and Erik Menendez guilty of first-degree murder. But that debate about the role of abuse in this case, it didn't end there. It's still going on today.
Yeah, the Menendez Brothers case, it really sparked a national conversation. A reckoning with the realities of abuse. It challenged how we understand trauma, the complexities of how people behave and how our justice system deals with these really difficult issues.
It made us all look a little closer at the families we thought we knew. Question whether those perfect-looking families might be hiding something much darker.
Absolutely. And I think this case is a stark reminder that the human mind, it's fragile. It can be broken by cruelty, by neglect, sometimes in ways we can't even fathom. It forces us to confront the damage that abuse can inflict, lasting damage.
It also challenges our own biases. How do we define a victim, a perpetrator? Are those lines always so clear-cut? The Menendez Brothers case, even after all these years, it still haunts us with those unanswered questions, those unsettling possibilities.
This is a story that goes beyond legal judgments. It's about the darkness that people are capable of under unimaginable pressure. It's about a family that was destroyed, a tragedy that stays with you,
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the Menendez Brothers case. It's a story that it makes you think. It makes you think about the human experience, about the darkness that can hide beneath the surface, even in what seem like the most perfect lives.